and why certain films and why certain movies impact us the way that they do. And what does your favorite film reveal about your personality, right? A lot of times we find ourselves watching a film many times. Have you ever done that? Why watch that one film 5 times? Has a movie ever provided you with a safe place, a place where it seems as though whether it was fantasy, sci-fi, drama, action, it was a place where it's like, okay, that makes sense. What type of characters do you root for? Do you root for the rule breaker or the saint? Have you ever watched a movie and you felt like the villain actually had a point? On today's broadcast, guys, we are going to chop it up. We are going to have a really good conversation. And I am so thankful for everyone who's been rocking with me thus far. And I think that is amazing how we have to give ourselves time to grow. I think that a lot of people recently have been discussing the Oscars, talking about favorite movies, and so I thought that tonight would be a good night to talk about films. And also, this is a way for me, let me get on camera. This is a way for me, Brian, your host across the culture wars, to meet my audience, right? A lot of times we watch streamers, but it's hard for us to relate to the streamers because we don't know who they are. But in this, you can relate to me because I'm going to list my all-time favorite movies. Why are they my favorite movies? And what they have taught me. So without further ado, guys, we're going to get into one of these topics. So I like stories that reveal or teach us things that maybe in life we didn't really know or understand. And as an example, loyalty is something that's really big to me. So a lot of the movies that I like, they reveal loyalty or betrayal. It's something that I think a lot of people can relate to. And so I'm going to play a clip. I can't play clips from movies, obviously, because it would lead to copyright strikes. But I did have some screenshots of some of my favorite movies. I'm going to play this clip. I'm going to talk about my favorite movies one by one. And thank you if you're rocking with me. And you'll be surprised what your favorite film actually may reveal about your personality and the psychology and your philosophy on the world.
Men love deep. Women are long suffering. Women don't know that men love deep. And that is why, and what women don't recognize is that men are actually more loyal than women are. We exhibit this in our purchasing behavior. A woman will purchase, even if the hair product that she bought worked beautifully for her, she can't help it but to try another beauty product. If a man finds a body soap that works for him, he's going to have that body for the next 20 years. Yeah. Very loyal, very consistent. It's not that men don't have the capacity to do so. Of course, there's conditioning and social, inferences and learnings that we need. But the point is that it's possible. It is there. We just don't recognize it. So because men are stoic and because men say things like we want respect, we
Okay.
believe,
So yeah, I think
first off,
that
women don't even know what that means tangibly.
I
What respect, what does that look
statement,
like?
right?
And second of
Say that
all,
men are
men
more
actually
loyal than
crave
women.
emotional
I'm
intimacy
not
and
going to
connection.
necessarily say that because
But
it's loyal
public
women out
facing
there.
will say
But in
respect.
this,
But when you
this
really begin to break
this
down
enables
respect,
me
there's an
to bring up
emotional
one of my
tension,
favorite recent films,
connection to that. Right?
and
There's this
that is Sinners. So Sinners made the list for one of my favorite films because it explores a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight, you guys. It explores loyalty, um, it explores loyalty. So in this film, we see multiple characters, Smokestack, their love interest, exploring loyalty. And in loyalty, we are always faced in relationships with having to battle being an individual and having to work with the group, right? And a lot of times when we try to experience relationships, there's going to be disharmony in relationships, right? That's a part of being in a relationship. And what I love most about this film was it showed that relationships have disharmony, right? However, it doesn't mean that the two people don't love one another. We see this with Smoke, we see this with Stack. Um and we see this with in this scene, we see this scene with the passion because the female character in the film, she wants to know why Smoke abandoned her. And he says that basically he had to do what he had to do. But really, it was about safety and security. I love films that bring a lot of realism into the world. Why could they not be together? Well, in this time period, she could pass for white or YT. He could not. He was a black male. So their relationship, due to the environment, and this is what I mean about it's hard for us to exist in harmony because two people can want to have the relationship, right? The feelings could be mutual. However, the two people don't exist in a vacuum. The relationship exists in the world. They have to go outside, right? And the environment would not allow them to be together. So she ends up marrying a YT man, right? And when she marries a YT man, that gave her a certain status and allowed her to have a safe life. So that meant that Smoke actually had unconditional love for her. He could because he realized that although he loved her, his lifestyle, his race, and the environment would never allow them to be together. Now, we see a play on this later in the movie when she becomes a vampire, right? And that is like in a dark way is like them becoming vampires with each other allow them to actually be together for eternity because in the world they wasn't allowed to be together dealing with race. Now I didn't know this, but I think that the reason that this affect me so much is because I value loyalty. Like loyalty is big with me, you know, and that doesn't mean that I'm perfect, but do you value loyalty or independence? I love this scene too because her mother had passed away. And it's like at her lowest point, she wanted him to come and rescue her. She was in the Delta of Mississippi and he was in Chicago. Her mother passed away, or it's alluded that her mother passed away, she tells him. And she's like, where were you? Where were you when I needed you? And she says, the way that you make love to me, the way that you expose yourself to me, basically I thought that we had something. And he had to downplay his love for her, and he fought this in the first half of the movie. He fought his love for her because he didn't want the world that he was in to damage her. He was trying to protect her from him and from the environment. So I believe he had unconditional love for her, and I believe that she had unconditional love for him. And it also shows how sometimes as adults, when we have to choose between safety and security and love, it doesn't always show up the same way, right? Some people are loyal to a one true love. Some people would say, you know what? I love this person. They might not be my one true love, but I can build with them, right? I can be safe with them. So Sinners is movies, and I also love the fact that it dealt with the Delta blues. It dealt with things of that nature. So Sinners is definitely on the list. And I think that it experimented and it talked about betrayal, right? It was she felt betrayed. She needed answers. She needed closure. So let's get into betrayal.
Betrayal trauma is one of the hardest things that you'll ever do in your life. Letting go of that resentment, letting go of the hate and the anger is not easy. But I believe the only way to work through those issues and to finally get to a place where you're okay is to come at the situation with love, understanding, and appreciation. And I know a lot of people are going to think I'm insane. But let me ask you, is holding on to that resentment and that anger helping you out? What if you were able to actually bring love and understanding to that situation? Understanding what that betrayal taught you, understanding more deeply why that person betrayed you, understanding why all of this is going on and how it's actually benefiting you so that you can have that love in your heart, so that you can work through all of that and move on with your life. If you want to know how to do that, if you're dealing with trauma and you can't figure out how to get rid of this anger and this resentment, book a free session with me, DM me. Let's talk. Because I think I can help you overcome all of that. And I think I can actually put a plan together that is going to. So let's talk.
So in these films, going back to why I like certain films, the film Sinners dealt with betrayal on multiple levels. So one of the obvious ways we see this character on the screen, she feels betrayed because her love interest, Smoke, doesn't come to rescue her after her mom dies. He abandons her, or she feels abandoned. She passes as YT. He's black during an era of extreme discrimination where race played a huge role. So, what this film revealed, honestly, to me, is that sometimes we root for characters because we want a moral win. We want our heroes to succeed, you know, and even if they break the rules, him and his brother coming back to the Delta where their story had obviously originated from, but coming back as anti-heroes to a degree. It's something that we could relate to, right? And we see the betrayal because she felt abandoned. She was married in the film and she was willing to betray her husband in the film to be with her one true love. So even from the husband's perspective, which we're never we hear of him, but he's never introduced to us, it's a betrayal to him because he could have loved this woman, but her heart was somewhere else, right? And that is really interesting. Another film that's a romance film that I always appreciated is A Bronx Tale. Man, this is one of my all-time favorite movies. A lot of the movies I like, the first two movies dealt with race a lot. With three movies on my list deals with race, identity. And I love films like this because when I was younger and I was growing up, the world didn't make much sense to me. Oftentimes, even now, the world doesn't make sense to me. I'm still asking questions. In this scene, And the reason why I picked this scene is in the scene, the main character is in love with the girl from the other side of the tracks, basically, right? He says she's from Webster Avenue, she's a Negro, right? His mentor tells him, okay, he said, well, she's a colored girl, and he's in love with her and he likes her. But society says that he shouldn't be with her based on race, identity, and the fact that they come from different worlds. So as a result, his mentor tells him, who cares what other people say? Don't care what other people think. If you love this girl, if you want this person, then follow through with what your heart is telling you. Now he could have told him, hey man, don't do that. But he's seen that this is something that this person was captivated by. And then oftentimes in life, once we get a little bit older, love actually becomes secondary to survival. We live in a system where race is tied to who gets resources historically. Even if you want to say we live in a colorblind society now and you want to look at it through rose colored lenses, we see that people historically, right, have been denied resources based on race. So if he gets with this lady, this black lady, and they have an offspring, because this is how parents think, this is how grandparents think. Well, these are the society rules. You're YT, she's BLACK. If you get with her and you guys procreate, then your kids are going to be mixed. Because the system of racism exists, your kids will be eligible to be discriminated against. So, in order to avoid all of that, many people forego interracial dating. Not because they don't, not because the feelings are mutual or not mutual, but because the environment is hostile.
One thing I refuse to compromise on in relationships is romance. It is a must for me. Now, don't get me wrong, I love thoughtfulness in general, right? But I also love a thoughtfulness that sits outside of everyday routine. Thrill me, surprise me, make me feel extra special. I want it all. I want to be that married couple in that 30, 40, 50-year relationship who still surprise each other, who still gift each other, who still excite each other, who still do those little sentimental things that make the person feel extra love. I want to be that wife with a husband who goes above and beyond. I want to be the wife who goes above and beyond. I want to create magic in the mundane, and romance will do it every single time for me. Healthy relationships without romance might exist, and that's good for them, but it's a hard no for me. And one thing people need to realize is romance does not have to be expensive. People think it needs to be extravagant in order to count. No, it needs to be sentimental, or it needs to be unique. It needs to be anything that makes your partner feel special. Anything that doesn't fall into the mundane, right? Romance is so much more about effort and thinking outside of the box than it is about money. And when you reduce it to money and money alone, tells me you're not that naturally romantic.
So I played the because we live in a world, we live in a world where so many people want to know. We live in a world where so many people want to know that they are valued. People want to know that others care about them. And in this film, it was an example of that. When a person is willing to cross racial lines or cross what society says is the right thing to do, break social norms in the name of love, even at a young age, I could respect that. And it was a very um eye-opening film. The love interest was gorgeous, and in this scene particular was one of my favorite all-time movie scenes. So his mentor tells him, hey, do you like this girl? He's like, yeah. Do you want to be with her? Yeah. He's asking him about the fact, like, what does he think because she's black? And he says, give her the test, the door test. And the guy's like, what's that? He says, when you guys go on a date, I want you to get out of the car and I want you to walk around, basically, and to see if she unlocks your door, or vice versa, if you put her in the car, to see if she would unlock the door for you while you're walking around the vehicle. And so he does the test for her. And basically it's like thoughtfulness, going back to what the previous lady was saying about romance, that if the other person thinks about you, thinks about your well-being, then you know that they really care about you. We live in a time where romance has been how can I say, has been in some ways undervalued, in some ways commodified because of capitalism. And I really like this film because it's also dealing with other political issues going on, money making, the gangster life, thug life. Um, and this film taught me to value loyalty over money. The next movie that I'm going to get into is, since we're in the vein of these types of films, is Goodfellas. Goodfellas is one of my all-time favorite films. I love this movie. If it's playing, I'm stopping and watching it. I don't care. This movie is so good. It doesn't matter what time of day is playing, where you catch it at in the movie. It could be the last 10 minutes of the movie, and you will still sit and watch the last 10 minutes, even though you know how it ends. This movie deals with betrayal. So the main character, Henry, grows up in a gangster a gangster environment. He's half Irish, half Sicilian. And it deals with the mob, it deals with the 60s, the 70s, and it deals with a way of life. And it also deals with family, friends, and people who came into the country as immigrants finding a way to have prosperity in the system that wanted to discriminate against them. That's actually the undertone of the film, is that the people, the Italians and the people from Sicily, were not considered part of the dominant society. When they first got to the country, they was treated as other. They wasn't classified as WHITE, right? And so the mob and the gangster background was used and was created because they wasn't permitted to be part of the dominant society. So the main character, Henry, he's as a young age is enamored by the gangster life, the thug life, and his whole life he wanted to be a gangster. And then we see we see his transition from boyhood to young adulthood to being a man, and then we see the trajectory where he realized that the brotherhood isn't what it's all made up to be. And at the end of the film, what ends up happening is he ends up testifying and turning on his brothers. He betrays his brothers in the film. He betrays his wife in the film. He loses himself in the film. It's a story about seeing a person spend years wanting to become someone only to lose themselves in the process. And so the Goodfellas is one of my all-time favorite movies. And what it revealed to me about myself is that I love films about choices and consequences. In life, guys, we all have choices. We have choice to decide, at minimum, what decisions we have control over. In the film, Henry chose to be a gangster. In the film, Henry chose to participate in crimes and unfortunately unaliving people, and he did it in the name of his brotherhood. However, he later told on Paulie, he told on the other mentors, people that he had spent years knowing. And then he also seen one of the reasons he stopped believing in the brotherhood is he seen them infighting and turning on each other. Now, one of the pivotal scenes in the movie is that they pull off a heist in New York or New Jersey. They pull off a heist where they steal millions of dollars. That's like the climax of the film. And then everything goes downhill after that, right? So they get more money than they ever had before. They're going on vacations together. But then as time goes on and the money starts to dry up, they start leaning on each other, right? The brotherhood starts extorting other people in the brotherhood. The character, played by Joe Pesci, he could become what's known as a made man, which means that in order for you to be made in society or become a high-ranking person, right, in the family structure, both parents have to go back to Sicily. So basically, if one of your parents, which Henry, he could not be made because he had one parent that was Irish and another parent that could be traced to the old country. So both parents have to be from the mainland of Sicily in order for you to reach a higher status in the film. And that deals with loyalty, because it's like, okay, we need to know that you are like us, that we are from the same tribe. So if you are Sicilian, half Sicilian, you could be part of the family, but you could never be a high ranking member in the family because you have dual allegiances. One of your family members is from here, another your family member is from here. What ends up happening is Joe Pesci's character is unalive because he put a hit out on the made man without permission from the upper bosses, and then he lost his life. And I believe that that was really one of the turning points for Henry, is when one of his best friends was unalive. It broke them apart because they couldn't strike back. So that movie taught me a lot about betrayal and about loyalty. um Man, it's such a beautiful film. The way it's shot, the music in the background, the soundtrack. It's just an amazing soundtrack. Martin Scorsese, just a great, phenomenal director. And in my personal life, I still think about loyalty. I still think about betrayal. And also keeping walking the fine line of not losing myself in the process of becoming who I want to become. Now we're going to lighten up a little bit. One of my all-time favorite movies, guys, is The Mummy. As a kid, this film came out in 1999. Guys, this is one of my all-time favorite movies because it's deep but still fun to watch. It's heavy. It deals with love, betrayal, loyalty, the afterlife, reincarnation. Why are we born? Why are we here? What are we meant to be doing? It connects the past with the present. And so The Mummy is one of my all-time favorite movies because it deals with who we are on a deeper level. And so um what The Mummy taught me was that I value adventure and undying, light-hearted spirit and fun. Like, I love adventures. Like, in my personal life, I want to visit at minimum at least 60 to 100 countries before I kick the bucket. That's just a personal bucket list item for me. So far, I've been to 5 countries, so I got a lot more to adventures. And this film was one huge adventure. And it also has a lot of deeper meaning because the mummy, to get to the storyline, he is brought back to life, and he realized that the love of his life Anoxia Moon is reincarnated in another body, but she's married to someone else. So he's trying to reconnect lost love with the present. And as a result, it's a conflict between the current husband and him, right? And we see this a lot in films, right? Who gets the girl, right? Love, romance, loyalty, betrayal. And at the end of the film, what ends up happening is he realizes that the woman that he loved is a new version of herself. She's been reincarnated, and he's about to pass away and fall off a cliff, and the husband, and she chooses to save the husband. And so he smiles at the end, and he jumps to his you know what, because he realized that the love of his life loved someone else, and as a result, since he had unconditional love for her, he allowed himself to perish because if he would rather let go of the past and allow her to move on and be with someone else because he still wanted the best for her. And guess what, guys? It's rumors of another mummy being made. They already made part one, part two, I believe a part three, right? So they're coming out with another mummy in 2026. Man, the universe just keeps on giving to us. This is this movie has been a part of my life for 20 years. Like, it's one of my favorite films. As a kid, now as a young man, I just love this film. So, like I said, why do you like your favorite movies? What do they reveal about your personality? What about the what characters do you like the most and why? Right? And so another film that really impacted me as a kid is the Spike Lee movie Malcolm X. Man, this movie was just so intense as a kid. And I believe what this movie taught me was, would you sacrifice everything for a cause? I think that that question accurately highlights that film and the person that is El Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X. He was a person that sacrificed everything for a greater cause. His story is so tragic, yet it's a story about transformation. What that film taught me is that I do believe that people can change. We see a transition and a metamorphosis. Him as a young kid, he wanted to be a lawyer, an attorney. And the teacher in class told him that he could not be an attorney because of the color of his skin. Later, he's working as a porter on the plane on the train, and he's still facing extreme discrimination. His father is unalived by a Klansman. He goes through horrific things. His mother ended up in a mental institution, and he's forced to defend and fend for himself. So he transitions from Nebraska to Detroit and then later Harlem. And we see him being a completely different version of who we would know him to be and who he became to be. He went from being a thug and a pimp to being a redeemer. He worked to redeem himself. High moral standard, pulling himself up from the penitentiary to being a world leader. So that movie taught me a lot about transformation, about not giving up. Even at your lowest, don't give up. Why? Because you never know who you could be. And if you stop now, you never know what you could have became. If you give up now, right? In life, many times we want to give up. Things happen. We want to quit. We want to give up. Woe is me. Not realizing that if you keep going, success is right there around the corner. So many people give up right before they was about to win. And that film taught me never to give up. Would you sacrifice everything for a cause? And another film In that same vein, but in a different reality, I Am Legend. Will Smith put on a masterclass in this film. One of my all-time favorite actors, heavyweight in the game. This film was a masterclass. Now, if Malcolm X taught us what would we do, what would you sacrifice for a cause? I Am Legend is about how long could you continue if you were all by yourself? Resilience, the ability to act under extreme pressure, uh, neurological or biological chemical drug was given to the populace. It was supposed to end cancer. What ends up happening in the film is that everyone who did not have an immunity to it perished and became zombies. And he is living in the metropolitan New York, and it's like 5 or 7 years into the future, and he's trying to make contact with the outside world. Dystopian reality. All society has collapsed, and he has to use all of his wits to survive. And he's trying to make contact. He also ends up taking the mummies, and not the mummies. He ends up taking the zombies, and he's trying to cure the zombies and get them back to becoming human again. The saddest part of the film, guys, is his dog gets infected and he has to end the life of his dog. Man, this is a masterclass. And this film taught me how resilient could I really be if I was all alone. So many people say that they don't need anyone. But this film taught me that we really do need people, that we really do need community, that we really do need other people. Because when he was all alone, his wife, his daughter, his friends, his family, the whole city, and at night, these zombies come out, and guess what they feast on? They feast on uninfected humans. It's a very deep film. Very deep film. We deserve a part 2 to this film. I don't know if we're ever going to get it, but we definitely deserve a part 2. And I would say this. Have you ever noticed that your favorite movie isn't actually about the plot? Sometimes these films are like a mirror. The characters you root for, the unexpected endings. Have you ever watched a movie and the movie ended in a way and you like, this how it's gonna end? That's how I felt about this movie. He been fighting the whole movie, and then the zombies come in and get him. Man, that still gets to me like, man, it's like the things that we spend years trying to overcome. What if they conquer us in the end? What if we lose the great fight? So I Am Legend is one of my all-time favorite films. And in learning about that film, it taught me a lot about resilience. And there's also a book. I would say read the book too. I haven't read that book. I would love to read the book. I found out that was a book many years later. I didn't even know that was a book. But I think that if any film ever was created that at least tried to get the point across, that was that film.
One thing I refuse to compromise on in relationships is romance. It is a must for me. Now, don't get me wrong, I love thoughtfulness in general, right? But I also love a thoughtfulness that sits outside of everyday routine. Thrill me, surprise me, make me feel extra special. I want it all. I want to be that married couple in that 30, 40, 50-year relationship who still surprise each other, who still gift each other, who still excite each other, who still do those little sentimental things that make the person feel extra love. I want to be that wife with a husband who goes above and beyond.
I think that with these, I was talking about film. So if you're just joining, we're talking about what does your favorite film reveal about you, right? What does your favorite film reveal about your personality? What do you value? Many films deals with loyalty, betrayal. We just finished talking about I Am Legend, a film about what if you were the last person on earth? What if you were all alone? How resilient could you be? So we talked about A Bronx Tale, a movie about that taught me about valuing loyalty over money and also dealing with the color line and the color barrier. The main character in The Bronx Tale loved a girl who was a different ethnicity and race than he was, and he had to choose, would he be with her or would he not pursue his heart because of what other people would think? Similar to that movie, another one of my favorite movies, recent movie, but a classic to me, is Sinners. Sinners taught me that sometimes we have to be selfless because the person that we may love, we can't exist with them in harmony, largely due to the environment. We live in a hostile environment. The main character, Smoke, couldn't be with his girl due to race. And a lot of people may not want to acknowledge this, but millions of people deal with this every day. Think about all of the biracial people in the world that feel ostracized or feel different, made to be different because of the color of their skin, you know? And so that's really deep. And it dealt with loyalty and betrayal. And also, he lost his brother in the film. He lost his brother in the film, and I think that that's an underlying part of it too. That was which he plays the other. He plays both characters. He deserved to win a best actor award for that. I mean, that was a master class.
If you're struggling with the death of a loved one, I want to give you something that was really powerful for me during the death of my father. First, I want to say that you have to acknowledge your grief, allow it, and let it come and go because it will come and go in waves. And that is a natural part of the process, and to be gentle with yourself. But what helped me most was realizing that if I was going to honor my dad, then he would want me to continue on strong and to continue with joy. The suffering that I felt wasn't for him because he was gone to his next adventure. The suffering that I had was for me because I was trying to hold on to something and to someone who was never meant to be in my life forever anyway. That's not the way life works. And that if I was going to do him justice and turn from mourning his life to celebrating his life and honoring him, then I had to continue on with life with as much power and vigor and joy as he did.
And so going back to, man, I gotta touch back on Sinners for a second. Going back to Sinners. In Sinners, in Sinners we see the death of a loved one, right? We see Stack and Smoke, and he loses his brother in the film. But in this film, most films are going to deal with the tragedy of death because it's so entwined with the human experience. You're born, you live, you grow and you develop, and then we one day we have to pass away. When he had to watch his brother pass, a lot of people related to that. A lot of people felt that what it's like to lose a loved one. It makes you root for them even more, right? And in this film, going back, and this will be the last film I touch on today. Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans is one of my all-time favorite movies I don't care what anyone says. I'm a sports junkie. But I also love how this film captured a time period and also tried to teach us a lesson on what the world could be like, what we could be like if we can aspire for something greater. Why this particular movie is one of my favorite movies is this movie taught me a lot about friendship, about about standing up for injustice even when the world says that it's okay. In this film, which deals with losing a loved one too, we see these two characters form a bond. And the YT character in the film, he gets into a car accident later in the film. But before all of that, they actually start off as um adversaries to one another because they played the same position. One was an all-american and the other one couldn't be an all-american, mainly due to race. So the football coach takes over the school. You know the story if you watch the movie. The football coach, they give the head coach position to the black head coach. The white head coach is forced to become, if he wants to stay on the team, the assistant coach. It's in the 60s. A lot of people are not liking it. It's the first integrated high school, and they going to win the state championship. So we see this story being told through these characters, and they form a brotherhood. And what happens is, slowly as they become friends, they get to start seeing the world through the other person's eyes. When you are in a relationship or a friendship, what happens is, if you truly love your fellow man or your fellow sister, the person that you love, you see the world through their eyes. When he seen the world through his friend's eyes, he realized they're arguing about leadership. And he was like, hey, you guys, why don't you are you a leader? He said, yes. He said, do you think you've been doing a good job as a leader? And he says, yes. And then so the black character asks the white character, he says, well, why are you not telling the people in the dominant society, the people that's on the team, to do their job? Why are you not holding them accountable to doing their job? Why is it that you want us to do all of this work? It's a double entendre because they're having a deeper conversation than the conversation is being had. Sometimes and I'm a writer, sometimes things are said and some things are not said. So it's a conversation about race, about identity, about politics, and about social status. And my favorite part about this is that this scene forced him to identify his own prejudice and his own moral shortcomings. And later in the film, he does just that because he valued leadership. He was the all American on the team. And so he ends up telling one of the teammates on the team, hey, who purposely didn't want to block for his black counterpart. And he said, hey man, if you're gonna start, you need to block. You need to block. You need to do your job. We're on the same team, right? And so this is the beginning of their friendship, and then they later on developed a brotherhood, and they later won a championship. And Remember the Titans is one of my all-time favorite movies. Man, how can you not love that movie? It taught us so much. And it also taught me about me. So to everyone that's watching, everyone that's been supporting the channel, I like to say thank you. And I hope that this was a great stream. Um, I want the people that tune in, I want you guys to know who I am. I don't want you, like, a lot of times it's people talking, but why should we support across the culture wars? Because I'm a real guy. My name's Brian Dawson. I'm from Louisiana. And I've been all over the United States. I've been all through Latin America and the Caribbean. I've been living life and exploring. And I realized that one of the best things that we can do is have human interactions with one another. And if you watch this video on a playback, drop down in the comments and tell me what some of your favorite movies. What did they teach you about you? I would love to hear it. So, as a recap, let's talk about some of the movies that I talked about in this broadcast. Sinners. Gotta put Sinners up there. Have you ever been betrayed? Have you ever been betrayed? In Sinners, at the end of the movie, they were betrayed by the people that they bought the building from. Have you ever had your heart broken? Right? Do you know what it's like to see the person you love loving someone else? Do you know what it's like to double back with a victory lap? When they came back, they left, went to Chicago, came back as kings. People could relate to that. A lot of people could relate to that. When you spin the block and you come back and now you have a whole new perspective. When he came back, Smoking Stack returned to Mississippi, they had a totally different perspective on the world because they had been out, as we say, in Louisiana, in the South, they was off the porch. When you off the porch, you get a new perspective. See, I've been all over the United States. I know what New York feels like. I know what DC feels like. I know what Miami feels like. I know what Chicago feels like. I know what LA, I know what Wyoming and North and South Dakota feels like. I know what I had a ticket in Nebraska. I know what Nebraska feels like. You feel what I'm saying? So although I'm from Louisiana, I could relate to many diverse places or perspectives because I know what that feels like, and what it feels like is to be human, to be flawed. And that's why I really love that movie. Sinners is a classic.
Something that no one tells you about when you are deeply, deeply wounded and betrayed is that when you start dating again and when you're with somebody new, you no longer care. You were once really clingy and really a lover boy or girl and you really trusted someone. You have now flipped the tables to you do not trust anybody to the point where you are just automatically assuming they are betraying you and you do not give a fuck about their lies, their excuses. Like the second someone slips up, you're done. You're done and you leave without a trace. You're fucking ghost. Ghost, like we weren't even there, vanished. People do not understand. If they have not been through something like this, they do not understand. We do not have time to waste. We do not have months, years, weeks, days, hours, minutes to waste. We do not give second chances. People who have not been betrayed so deeply do not understand that. Give them a second chance. You're being too harsh. You're judging based on the past. Yes, I am. Yes, I am judging based on the past, bitch. And I'm using it. I'm using that evidence so that I do not end up in hell again. I am not being traumatized again. You go through something like this, you become so emotionally non-reactive if you've done the work. You become emotionally non-reactive because you've just fought so hard in that previous relationship to defend yourself, to figure out what they're doing, to try to like work around the gaslighting and the manipulation that you just do.
And that's why I love that movie right here, Sinners. I love this movie because Sister Girl felt betrayed. She felt betrayed. Have you ever had a heartbreak? She felt betrayed. She's like, my mother died. You didn't even come. She felt betrayed. Have you ever felt betrayed before? See, let me tell you something. Let me give you some game. Everybody's not playing games out here. That's the thing. You can't just play with people. And a lot of times we're living in such an unserious world that a lot of people normalize disloyalty. Disloyalty has become normalized, not keeping your word, being fake, being wishy washy, talking behind people's back, blabbing your mouth, being fraud, not being authentic. Authenticity has its place, simplicity has its place, and it's important. And I don't think people realize loyalty is always going to supersede everything for me. It's a big one for me. And I have been disloyal to myself, but I've also been disloyal to others because sometimes in loyalty, that it doesn't mean that you have to be ignorant and just say you're going to follow someone blindlessly or aimlessly. But sometimes it's okay to say, hey, this is where our paths end. We have to go because now our goals no longer align. Loyalty doesn't mean just blindlessly or aimlessly following the path. Sometimes loyalty is just being honest enough to say, hey, this is where our paths end. Why sister was upset was he never even told her. And they have a later scene where he tells her, like, dang, what was I supposed to say? That I love you? That I couldn't leave you? So he couldn't even say goodbye because he loved her that much. Man, it was an amazing film. One of my all-time favorite films thus far. So okay, now we have a Bronx Tale classic. Like I said, Bronx Tale taught me a lot. Um, it taught me to value loyalty over money. It taught me like follow your heart. We have Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans taught me, man, to just be solid. A brotherhood movie, a movie about brotherhood, about overcoming obstacles. That we have more in common than we have differences. And it revealed in me that we all have a fighter inside of us, right? And even in modern times, we have groups and agencies working to tear us apart. And like, one of my favorite artists, Bob Marley, say, to divide and rule could only tear us apart. So they want to divide and rule. They want to conquer us. So for every action, there's a reaction. Then we have I Am Legend. What if you were the last man on earth, seemingly? Could you still find purpose? We have The Mummy. It's a story about a crazy adventure. Classic. And there's so many other movies I could have named, but when I thought about this, these are the movies that came to me. And then we have Goodfellas. Man, Goodfellas might be one of, like, Goodfellas. If I had to make a list of these and say which one is the top three, I'd probably say Goodfellas and Malcolm X. Spike Lee, Martin Scorsese. And then I'll put Sinners maybe number three. Man, Goodfellas, man, a story about brotherhood, about losing oneself. He lost himself. The main character Henry, he lost himself in this film. With who he aspired to be as a youth and who he turned out to be as a fully grown man, he became who he wanted to be, which was a gangster. And he starts off the film and say, "All my life, I wanted to be a gangster." He wanted to be a gangster his whole life. But at the end of the movie, he lost his soul in becoming a gangster. He turned on his brother, his brothers. He became a snitch. He cheated on his wife. He couldn't keep his word. He became a drug addict, right? So this is a really big one, Goodfellas. Then Malcolm X, a story about sacrifice, two Americas. Why do people live and view the country so differently where they are from? And it's also a story about brotherhood and betrayal too, because in the film he falls out with his mentor, Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He falls out with his mentor in the film. So even Even that film is about loyalty and betrayal. That's like it's like heads and tails. It's so hard, and a lot of times we can be disloyal. We can even act in ways of betrayal unknowingly because how one person may perceive something, the other person don't see it that way. Malcolm X in the film and in the book, but in the film, he rose to such heights that it made one of the brothers in the film, a brother Baines, it made brother Baines upset because they was in the penitentiary together. And then they rose up through the ranks to become world leaders. And he became envious of Malcolm X, because Malcolm X had a greater relationship with the honorable Elijah Muhammad. And brother Baines was upset because he's like, basically, I introduced you to him. How he like you more than me? And then later, these same people that he was fighting for bombing his house, the same people he was fighting for trying to hurt his little girls. He was unalived by people, whether you're going to get into the alphabet boys and the three-letter groups, whatever. It was infighting in the group. He broke away from the Nation of Islam. He went to Mecca. His whole perspective changed. We never even got to see what he would have became because his life was cut short. A story about betrayal. Have you ever been betrayed? The people he prayed with bombing his house. The people he prayed with. He was in the trenches at the bottom. He was incarcerated. He had nothing left. Ironically though, do you know that Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X had a lot of things in common? They both I read that both of their fathers were unalived by Klansmen. So I think that he's seen a brother and a father figure in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And it's a story about betrayal, about loyalty, about resilience, and believing that people can change. So, with that, that's been my broadcast. Thank you all for listening. I'm your host, Brian. I hope that this has inspired you to check out some of my other videos on my channel.